Map 1, Sangal absolutely decimated FaZe. It was like 13-2. And you could say that's FaZe not waking up. And sometimes you can lose a series by not waking up. And it's not good, but it feels a little less worse, I feel like, than just getting dominated map 1. And then not only was it a close map 2, it was like 13-11, but FaZe get out to a pretty good lead. In fact, I turned off this game. I turned it on live. It was like 7-2 for FaZe CT side, and then I turned it off because I thought, okay, well, this game's over because FaZe woke up and FaZe is just a better team and it should be kind of trivial from here, right? But as it turns out, even with FaZe apparently having their players, you know, functioning, right? I mean, it's the first match of an event. Sometimes you can also you can have, give me one sec, let me I've got music on, it's super loud. Sometimes you can have, like, I'm not sure how long out from the actual event happening that the first opening matchups were decided. But sometimes you can definitely have teams that, like, oh, you know the opening matchup, so it gets a little more awkward because FaZe is probably looking past Sangal, and Sangal's looking directly at FaZe, trying to make sure that they get the win, or they give themselves the best chance of winning their first game. But still, I mean, if FaZe is ahead map 3 against a team like Sangal, there's really no reason they should be losing unless they just kind of collapse, to be honest. Or, I suppose, the problem with MR12 and letting it get to a map 3 is that these sorts of things can happen where you can have an individual kind of pop-off. Alright. But by the way, that nade from Kerrigan is a highly effective nade. You drop down sight, nade into lobby. That gets a lot of damage. A lot of people are kind of like delayed just outside hut, walking into hut. You can hit them with that nade. But the aggression is actually towards outer right now. And I kind of like this actually from Sangal. They're looking to put pressure on outer, and then they look to rotate over push ramp off of that contact. And one of the things that I know FaZe do quite often, FaZe are the first team I actually saw that did this, but I'm not sure they're the first team that did it, but they're certainly one of the teams that do it a lot, is they will just leave no ramp player. And I think that's really effective in certain scenarios, because if there's a lot of players going outer, you can pivot your ramp player over. You can even have your ramp player, if he's still got a nade, he can nade out the outer smokes, and you can actually really catch your opponents off guard by having like an extra nade for the outer smokes. And if they're hitting outer, the odds of having a player, you know, just randomly lurk ramp. Usually the lurk ramp comes a little bit later. It doesn't come as they're crossing outer. It's going to be like they're already across outer and then you lurk ramp afterwards so that you can like kind of connect up. But especially, I've seen this on FaZe on like 3rd and 4th round. They really love doing that. So I actually think that's just a really smart play from Sangal to like double lurk ramp off of the outer cross when you're getting a bit of contest. I'm not sure if that was like the original plan at the beginning of the round. It might have just been that they're like, okay, well, if FaZe heavy contest outer, if we're getting like pushback outer, then we're gonna go for this. Otherwise, we'll just stay to lobby and we'll be comfortable and we'll go for it a little later, or maybe we'll like do something. We'll like go back and split up or something. Lots of different options in theory, right? But I'm guessing that was just like the actual plan from the start, and that's actually, I think, against FaZe specifically, a really smart plan, because they do like doing this. You start with like Rops kind of towards J. He's in a good spot. It's very easy for him to get a kill, and because Brokey generally is going to start heaven like most oppers, he can actually pivot over and support ramp really effectively. And because Rops is Rops, he's not going to lose that duel on people peeking into him very often. Like, if I go into that angle, if I hold what Rops is holding there, which I mean, that's an anti-eco, right? But even on an anti-eco, I'm going to miss and someone's going to deeg me in the face. And then it's just going to be terrible. But not to say that he was, I don't know if he was even... Actually, he most likely was in that angle to begin with, because I think you have to kind of start out in that angle to pivot over into the outer play, and you have to be comfortable with the idea of like engaging someone. But one of the things that you have to do if you're going to play like that, if you're going to have those times when you fall off of ramp, is you also have to be willing to do this type of play, which, by the way, this is specifically, he comes through the side here because it's so common to come around this side that he was probably thinking that someone was just going to be sitting here. So I think he intentionally came through the side to catch someone that was like posted, like specifically ready for his exact play. But if you don't also get aggressive ramps sometimes and you don't also double ramp sometimes, then you're going to be exploitable if you do that type of play, the kind of like pivot over to like heavy outer. So Robs kind of has to, I mean, I don't know if you really have to get too aggressive all the time, but you really do want to make your opponents afraid of like every different scenario you could be going for. Arya Walker, Inaz, welcome. Just trying to do just a quick look at how FaZe somehow lost map 3, right? And to begin with, I mean, that's relatively solid from Rain. It's already a lot of utility used to take outer in theory, although actually as I say that I like immediately I was thinking, okay, they used a lot of utility, it's a 4v4. I mean, Rain got a lot of information with that. Technically, I mean, a 4v4 is definitely advantage to the T's, but you saw 3, I think you might have even seen 4 players, but Sangal actually have a ton of utility left. So although it can be tough to actually utilize that utility if you don't have someone throwing like mollies or flashes from like on top of lobby, it can actually be pretty tough to utilize that utility. The fact that Rops got aggressive, I thought was going to make a big difference, right? I actually thought Rops being aggressive in ramp was going to work perfectly because they could take lobby off of Rain's death. And if Rain dies, you've got all that information, plus you take lobby control. I think FaZe would be pretty comfortable in that spot. They would have lots of options as to how they could rotate around. But as it turns out, they just all died. No big blunders from FaZe that I recall. Interesting. Well, we'll keep watching. Brokey, I mean, FaZe have a decent amount of money, so I think he's just looking to hunt here a little bit. Is it the best idea to hunt? Should you be saving instead of hunting? I think no. I think you probably want to... I mean, he played it quite safe there, right? You don't want to just give away your gun for free, but because FaZe have a pretty comfortable buy right now, I think getting at least a kill or two, because the difference between 4 and 5 players alive compared to 2 or 3 players alive is a massive one in terms of the buy that they're going to be able to go for if they lose this round. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, Youngster and xFloud both aren't going to have any type of a buy, really. Oh, actually, with the loss bonus, 2,900, yeah, they're still not going to have a good buy, right? But in any case, Brokey does have the op now. FaZe aren't feeling great if they... Oh, my God. I mean, that's certainly not helpful. If you're map 3, you know, you're nading Rain. Although, I mean, honestly, if the nade had landed, they would have ended up peeking out into 2 separate people, which could have gone pretty wrong for them. But first contact from Rain outer. Now, xFloud gets across, and it looks like Rain... He might not even know that someone could be across. Although, no, it looks like he does know. And again, I mean, they're doing the exact same thing. Last time they went 3 outer, 2 guys lurked ramp. This time they're going 2 outer, 3 guys lurk ramp, and you do actually have the rotate in from Brokey at the exact right timing, which is the problem with this type of play, is if this rotate comes in, you're kind of screwed, but unfortunately, Brokey misses one shot and then he's trapped, right? The timing was kind of like perfect, because if Brokey... Even if Brokey hits that shot, it's going to be hard for him to get away, and it just catches him in transition, which is what I talk about a lot in these reviews, is like, you want to catch your opponents in transition if you can, although transition would be catching him in the middle of the open, or before he even rotated would probably be better, but like, you know. Couldn't find the key for the guy with the bomb, Jesus. But yeah, I mean, they caught him before he was completely set up and ready, right? And then people in my Discord were talking about, how do you pronounce this guy's name? Is it Jota? Hota? Jota, I guess? I mean, 1v3 was it? I mean, that is a relatively effective round. Getting the bomb plant is the key for Sangal. As long as they get the bomb plant there, their buy in this round is pretty decent. And they got enough kills that FaZe isn't, you know, FaZe. Now, this is like, if you talk about pivotal rounds, like the most important rounds of the game, early on in the game, this is like, this round happens most games. this type of round where like you kind of trade rounds back and forth, and now you have the chance to break their economy. And typically good T sides often come from this type of thing, because if they break FaZe right now, then FaZe are going to lose at least one more round kind of for free, and then all of a sudden you have a really effective T side like just out of that kind of immediately. But if we look at what Rops did before, a couple of rounds ago, they did that little, like, the outer into ramp thing. Then the round after, Rops walk pushed ramp. And this time, they did the outer into ramp thing. And now they're waiting for Rops to walk push ramp. And it's going to be interesting if they just continually attack ramp here. I mean, last round, they lost the round. But I would say, it's actually hard to say. Because I almost said that Sangal lost the round, but the strat worked. However, the strat kind of didn't work because Brokey was there in time. And so if Brokey just doesn't miss a shot, or if he has an extra second or two, then the strat didn't work. So it's kind of like, the strat kind of worked, but I think theoretically FaZe had the right read and they were in the right positions just about. But Sangal, if they had gone a few seconds earlier, it would have been perfect. So it's like kind of close either way. But this time around, Rops is just playing kind of like the standard spot. That's what you want. Like, great ramp players, they make contact, they get a kill, and then they can back up. But still, even if you have that situation, if you're Sangal, you want Rops obviously not to get one. You want him to drop. But this is the power of like going at least one player secret every round, right? That's why like most teams, if they smoke outer cross, they almost never have nobody cross, because it's just there's just so much value in having a person here. And then if you take ramp control, I mean, look at what the situation that FaZe are in now. They've got Rops' back sight, but Kerrigan wants to rotate off, and he's rotating right into Rops. And so, like, where are they playing? Like, he literally, I think he just started to rotate and was like, oh shit, Rops is right next to me. There's only like 2 or 3 places they can even theoretically be in. So they need the rotate, but Frozen rotating down vents is super risky to begin with, right? Like, that takes some big risk to go down vents, because someone could just be posted on him. Although, to be fair, I mean, when you look at it from FaZe's POV, if you're looking at Sangal's situation, they are pretty spread out to begin with, especially because Rops got a kill, so it's 5v4. So Sangal's necessarily pretty spread out. It's one of those things you see in pugs all the time. Someone just sits and watches vent for the whole round, and then their team can't take the site, and he's like, well, I had the flank, and it's like, that, yeah, that's cool, but you watch the flank when you're like 5v4 or 5v3. Like, when the site hits going well, that's when you watch the flank. You don't watch the flank when you're 4v5 and your team is like not even begun hitting the site, you know? Like, I'm thinking of people in, like, on a B rush on T-Pistol on Mirage that just like are watching the underpass flank from the first moment, and it's like, what if your team just didn't take like the site effectively? What if they just traded out and they couldn't plant the bomb because they didn't have an extra player, you know? But whatever. FaZe. Oi. Okay, so this is almost like one of the things that I noticed that Na'Vi do a lot is they don't get aggressive with Wonderful very often at all, but what they really like doing is they'll double and sometimes triple nade out these smokes like over time and just prevent any opportunity from people crossing. And this is going to be the second nade. In fact, after the first nade, a lot of the time you throw one nade and people are like, okay, it's safe now. And then they start crossing and the second nade just absolutely destroys them. But obviously Sangal were completely ready for that. And they're actually again going to outer pressure. This time they go outer to garage instead of outer to secret, and they rotate back around to ramp. And I'm guessing this is just an idea they know, that FaZe, when they lose an outer player, the ramp player is going to rotate off. And to be fair, I mean, I think that's a pretty standard... how standard is that rotation? Theoretically, it makes a lot of sense that you'd want to do this type of rotation, right? You lose an outer player, your ramp player can pretty easily pivot. But a lot of the time, you might have your ramp player pivot lower instead of outer. But either way, I think that's fine if you are Sangal. And the outer player... the thing is, the outer player for teams, this is different in pugs, right? When you have like an outer player and a mini player, but your mini player is your outer player. So if you get pushed off of outer, generally what's going to happen is that your mini player is going to drop lower. That's like your standard rotation. So if your mini player dies, then who can drop lower to prevent the outer player? It has to be your ramp player. and then you want to pivot your heaven player over towards ramp. But if Sangol are taking that opportunity to actually push outer and like pressure hell, then they can kind of actually potentially collapse on that. So I think that play actually makes a ton of sense, almost regardless of like whether, you know, what way they're aware that FaZe plays. Although I'm sure, I mean, if you're gonna play FaZe, I think Nuke is like one of the most likely maps to either be picked or be map 3 in the series. So they probably have a decent idea of how FaZe are generally going to play. But, I mean, that's like every gun round so far, Sangol have tried essentially the same exact play. FaZe, typically, I don't think are a team that's necessarily that heavy on upper either, which is a surprising part. I always felt like FaZe, not as much as some other teams, but I felt like FaZe sometimes feels a little exploitable in upper. Sometimes it feels like they're a little light on the upper holds, but they do, I mean, as any team, they do generally have their opper in the area, hell or heaven, and if your opper starts heaven and there's an upper rush, as long as your upper player is through the right utility, you should generally be able to hold it. Yeah, I kind of felt like one of the ways to try and attack FaZe would be to try and attack their upper setup, but they're doing precisely the opposite, right? They're actually just attacking the kind of the rotation, which is honestly like the reason I think Nuke kind of sucks in pugs is because that these types of rotations are really hard and it takes a lot of coordination. Like how often in a pug do you like catch someone in the middle of the open or catch like, oh, lower's completely empty, right? Like this happens all the time when it comes to pugs. And so the classical way I think to try and exploit a team on Nuke is to isolate their rotations or find a way to get an entry and then catch them where they're weak, right? So it's not that it doesn't make sense. It's just like I think it's like really smart. I'm like framing this the wrong way. I think it's really smart. LNZ misses the jump. We've all been there. Everyone admit it. It's just, it is what it is. Especially, well, they kind of fixed that jump, but they also made it worse at the same time. They made it better and worse at the same time somehow. But now we have the actual push through ramp. I mean, this is an aggressive response because Sangol have also just been very heavy in ramp every round, which means if you're pushing this, there's a good chance you're going to see 2 players. But that's why you lead with the AWP, because if the AWP makes contact, you can get a kill and back up pretty quickly if there are players in radio. Plus, you have Frozen getting aggressive in HUD as well. So if contact is made, Brokey gets the entry kill. That's gonna likely make the lobby players kind of look over towards the ramp play, and then Frozen can sometimes respond himself. This bot in chat just assumes I'm going to respond, I guess. It must be a bot. It just assumes a response. Whatever. Whatever. But yeah, the problem is if you get too aggressive on this, right, like the opposite thing can happen. The exact opposite thing can happen, right? So in theory, if Brokey makes first contact, gets the kill, the lobby setup can kind of crumble. But the problem is that if they're going to continue through lobby and they're somewhat committed to it, however, I mean, they do have, Rain hasn't heard anything outer, Kerrigan's lower. Now, if Kerrigan had a molly into smoke, I think they could play maybe more passive in lobby. Because like if we think about it, like if Kerrigan has a molly smoke, he could potentially like jiggle at this corner here, right in front of him, and then just drop the molly behind himself, or he could play like control side and molly when he sees contact, and then they're safe for a lower play. But they kind of, in this situation, I think there's like some pressure for them to continue getting aggressive, because while lobby looks clear, so of course you want to get aggressive, but also you're not safe to a lower play. So if you just play safe in lobby, if they go lower, you're not feeling too good, obviously. So, I mean, I think the plan all along here is to get aggressive, right? I'm just like, I'm just thinking of like, is there a possibility for them to not push in a lobby? I don't really think there probably is, but then it's just a matter of timing, right? Then it's just a matter of finding the right timing, and Jota's just in the right spot. Then once Rops dies, Frozen off of that contact, Frozen's looking to catch someone, because even if your teammate gets a kill, a lot of the time, someone, if you're not like really well drilled, and even if you are really well drilled, very often, someone else is going to pivot to look at that same location because you hear gunfire and you're kind of just thinking like, okay, there's contact, I should pivot to support. And also, if you think about it, like your teammate is also drawing their view, right? So like if Jota's shooting at Rops, then Rops is shooting back at Jota, and that means that someone here might try and shoot Rops in the side. Although, of course, you have to keep in mind, like, this op holding this angle and rifler walking in thing is extremely common, so... But, I mean, just in general, right? You have one player shooting at your teammate, then you're going to be safe to get a kill, and maybe even two players if there's two players walking in. So Frozen kind of, and especially because Rops dies, Frozen's like really required to peek out there. But it just doesn't work. Just doesn't work. You know, I want to give credit to Sangol. They're definitely doing a lot of really solid plays, whether they have an idea of the way FaZe like to play or not. And here, so if you're ever in a 1v1, you're watching this, if you're ever in a 1v1, you really have to consider the time because it really triggers me. It really triggers me when I see people, they're like, why didn't you play the time? Why didn't you play the time? And it's like, what do you mean play the time? It's like, imagine you're like a CT and imagine for a second you're on CT side and you're in a 1v1 and there's 5 minutes on the clock and you see someone like on site, on A site. You see the final T on like behind silos on upper on Nuke here, right? And you peek out on him and die, and your teammate's like, bro, why didn't you play the time? And it's like, what fucking time? He can go anywhere. It's the same thing with like sometimes with the bomb timer. It's like the CT's on the bomb site and the bomb has like 20 seconds left, and it's like, play the time. And it's like, the fuck do you mean play the time? There is no playing the time. If I play the time, he's just gonna he could walk me down. Okay, 20 seconds, maybe like sometimes you just see it where like you plant the bomb and then someone peeks out on you and someone's like, why don't you play the time? It's like, there is no playing the time if there's that much fucking time. The time is like barely even a factor. You're never gonna, yeah, the moment the bomb gets planted, bro, it's like, you're never gonna waste full 30 seconds where someone fakes, wait 5 seconds, peek, see, like check if he's on it, wait 5 seconds. Like you're never gonna have 5 times where they fake and you peek into them and neither of you is dead. You know, you cannot waste that much time. Although I'm not sure if that's necessarily relevant in this scenario. By the way, I mentioned in a different demo review recently that I feel like the AUG is making a bit of a comeback, and this is one of the positions I think the AUG is really strong at. You have this spot on ramp. I've seen Eternal Fire, I think, use this recently. Then you have, like, Kerrigan has been AUGing it up. B Apartments on Mirage, I don't think he kind of almost ever stopped doing it. I think it's like an equalizer. Like, when you look at, like, 2019, you had... People complained about the AUG meta because it was like, all these noobs now, they would never kill me without the AUG. And it's like, well, maybe play the game better instead of just headshotting people better. Like, doesn't that make it more tactical a little bit? But I think there's a lot of pretty solid spots for the AUG, especially I think the AUG is worth having equipped at this point, because if you're having a bad game, I really do think it's like a really solid buy, and in a lot of positions on several maps, it's just like a solid buy to just be like, I'm having a bad game, I'm just gonna grab an AUG, and I'm just gonna make sure that if someone peeks into me, I'm not gonna die 1v1. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna open up a game or open up the round and this guy just walks into me, because that's what happens. Like, Beyond Mirage is such a great example, because that's what happens to some people Beyond Mirage. You're having a bad game and your opponents literally just they take mid control and they have a guy lurk B apps and he just kills you, right? Like, I've had that happen to me before when I'm having, like, if I'm playing B and I'm having a bad game, it's like, fuck, and then it's just, you just die. You know. Okay, triple ramp setup. So I mean, yeah. Wow. How much damage did they even take? All right, they got one guy that's lit. That is unbelievable how hard FaZe just got destroyed. Wow. That's crazy. So, I mean, not only was FaZe 8-4, they were 9-4 after winning Pistol. And I mean, CT side Nuke, second round, it is one of the maps where I think you win the most force buys or anti-ecos. But I don't know. The thing is, I've never liked these sorts of like ramp rushes, upper rushes on second round forces, but they do have their place because if you never do those sorts of fast plays, then your opponents, what the fuck? This guy wasn't even on his screen. How did he just get hit? Is it Rain? Rain must hit him, right? Let me see. What? Oh, he's just pre-firing. That's fucking wild. Oh, no. Okay, hold on. He's not hit yet. Damn it. Okay, he does see him. I thought he was just pre-firing and he dinked him. Okay, I think he does see him a little bit. Yeah, the problem is, right, if you don't ever get aggressive, you don't do these sorts of rushes on second rounds, you're going to be a little too readable. And when it comes to Nuke, I think like Inferno, Mirage, Dust 2, I don't think rushes are necessary because if you just play slow, you can feel out their setups so easily. No, I wouldn't say so easily, but you definitely have the ability to feel out their setups, right? And you can figure out where they're stacking, where they're not, where they're weak, where they're strong. Nuke, you can, but Nuke a lot of the time it does turn into like, well, if we walk out upper and they're stacked upper, unless they're like peeking into us, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, they could just be rafters, backside, top hut, mini. And it's like, so I'm not even going to know they're stacking until we walk into the stack, you know? Nuke, as opposed to maps like Mirage and Dust 2, I think is hard to sniff out a stack and react accordingly without at least losing one or two players in doing so, you know? So I think Nuke has the best justification for these sorts of plays. And actually, Rain 1v1, they're 15 health combined. But he probably doesn't know they're 15 health combined. Yeah. And that's a nice little, I mean, he's trying to play around guessing on who's going to be peeking first. And in theory, you would think that the guy Doors would be peeking out after that flash pretty quickly, but Jota also has to gain a lot of space. Wait, was it Jota coming from ramp? The ramp player has to gain a lot of space, so he kind of has to push out. It's just an awkward spot for Rain. Maybe one of the plays he could have made there potentially is that he sees that door open and he immediately pushes into the door and takes the fight there. He might be worried that he's like walking into an MP9. Rain might not have even had armor there, by the way. I'm not sure how much they must have like force, so he must have had armor, right? Nice fucking shot. I was thinking maybe he didn't have armor, maybe he didn't have head armor, so like he's worried about walking into an MP9. But I mean, pushing into the door there could have made a lot of sense. Although he could have gotten peeked from the second door, like as he pushed in and died. I was kind of surprised he didn't just immediately like pivot to push in the door. But I guess as soon as the door opened, he was thinking that that guy saw him, and once that guy sees him, the guy's gonna swing out or something. Someone said, what gun should I remove for the AUG if I'm going to equip the AUG? Scout would be the most obvious one if you don't use the Scout very often. I wouldn't remove the FAMAS because I think there are situations where you need it, although maybe if you never use it. However, probably if you never use it, you're probably... Well, maybe you just play positions where the FAMAS, like where the MP9 can be used. But usually, you know, there's some positions on every map where most maps where you just can't justify buying an MP9. You kind of like connector and like Cat on Mirage. Like you just can't buy an MP9. You need a FAMAS. Maybe one M4 instead of both M4s. I mean, most people actually, if you think about it, I think most people only really use one M4. Like they have both equipped so they can drop the teammates, right? But how many people here use both M4s regularly? Like if you're low money, you buy the A1S. If you're good money, you buy the A4. I'll use the A4 once in a while, but like I feel like most people primarily just use one of the two, right? All right, so this is an interesting aggression. So it's very similar I actually didn't notice they had an opera. So this is basically the same as the FaZe aggression, right? They've got Youngster pushing in. They've got what was Brokey, but this time Kerrigan is peeking from the back. So FaZe is in a different setup. But the key here is that FaZe also only has 2 players lobby, right? Sangal was clearly very ready for the FaZe lobby crunch when FaZe went for it, because FaZe had been kind of winning rounds, but they've been kind of exploited a little bit in their setups. So trying to get aggressive back and like take some control of lobby made a lot of sense. Here, I mean, this is like this is not a bonus round. The thing is for Sangal. If this is a bonus round, I think FaZe might even have 3 players lobby and just be completely ready for it. But because of the way these rounds went back and forth with FaZe winning pistol round, this is like an actual round. This is like an actual buy round from Sangal. So it's you might be less so expecting a lobby crunch. And then, wow, that's just a quick shot. I mean, yeah. So Rob, that's like a pretty, I feel like that's a pretty smart play from Robs. It's risky, right? But I mean, this is the type of play that you would never see from Nexa, right? You would never see this shit from Nexa, because he's like, I'm not going to be able to win this fight. But Robs knows, okay, they're throwing a smoke. I just heard the Opera run back, which means this guy just threw a smoke. He's not going to be ready for me to be through this. I can catch him off guard. But Jota lands the shot. This is a really nice shot. And that was like, I still think that was a solid play from Robs. Like, that play has a lot of merit. It can go wrong, obviously, but that play, I think, has a ton of merit. Okay, so LNZ was jump spotting. That's just a solid flash on the rotation, right? So LNZ jump spotting, spots him out, gets spotted. There's the flash, and then from Rain's POV, opens the door. He kind of looked at it, but just couldn't quite turn in time, and that kill was the round, I think. Like, if Rain dodges that flash, turns back and gets the kill, or maybe he was thinking that the peak would come before the flash, but if he just stops that, if he like survives, then this round's kind of like very good for them. But actually, as I say that, Frozen is just gonna kill their whole team. Okay. You know, sometimes people want to think of CS as this like genius chess game where like everyone's outplaying everyone else and it's like 300 IQ moves, but at its core, you know, CS is about making your shots easy and your opponent's shots hard, right? But if they hit the shot, it doesn't matter how hard it was. That was wild, dude. That was wild. Sangal's really gonna mess up a bitch, and they almost mess up a bit and almost throw the entire match. Okay. I mean, this is how they would do it, right? If they lose this round, they're gonna be down 11-7. They're gonna be on eco or a force buy. They're gonna be in a really rough spot, right? So this is kind of, if someone's saying that they mess up a bit, this is where I would expect the mess up a bit to be happening. Okay, so there's the nade. The first nade, now they're ready to cross, but one of the things you can do is you can use that as a bit of a bait, right? Because why would you nade, like, if you have a guy nading and spamming outer, do you also have a guy secret? Usually no, but sometimes yes. And this is the pivot that FaZe tried to make at some point, I believe, as well. I think they tried to pivot in this setup when Brokey walked in and was a little late. But that player gets spotted hell, and that's like the signal, because here's the thing. When this player gets spotted hell, a lot of the time he's going to know, okay, I was spotted hell and we had a guy's secret, which means ramp typically will be weak here. So he's either going to pivot back into heaven to cover upper, because FaZe might respond upper. But more often than not, when you're doing that type of outer cross, you're not setting up for an upper hit. You're probably setting up for a ramp hit. So I think a good amount of the time, you as FaZe, if you wait an extra, this is why timing is like the most important thing in CS, more so than using the correct utility, is like, at lower levels, when I see teams make this read and they understand this is happening, it's already too late. So you want, like, that player gets spotted outer, FaZe want to go for the ramp play quite quickly before that ramp rotation can come in, because once there's 2 players there, you're screwed. But Sammy finds the exact perfect timing, either just because he had the right feel for it or because he knew that response is likely, and just gets the kill anyways, you know? And then Frozen did get 3 kills last round, but not this time. The max firepower meta is kind of boring. You mean just every team is trying to be a super team, or what? Holy fuck, I just snapped cracked my knuckles, and Oh my god. My fucking arm just started hurting. What the fuck? But Sangal did lose 3 players there, right? No, they lost 2 players, okay. And FaZe, yeah, this is one of those like balancing buys, right? I feel like this is, of all the maps, I feel like this one has the least opportunity for this sort of balancing buy to go that well. But it's interesting, actually. Sangal is just playing their upper ramp, like multiple rounds in a row. They're just like, okay, you just put the opera here. We're not going to give you any opportunity, because what Sangal was doing on their T side, and I still feel like this is so true. I see this so often. It's unbelievable. It's like, especially, this is more of a pug thing, but like just in general, teams really do seem to play against on their CT side, they do things that would counter their T side, and on their T side, they do things that would counter their CT side, right? So like, and it makes perfect logical sense. It's not like an accident. Like if you think a strat is really good on your T side, it's probably because that strat beats you on your CT side, right? It's probably not an accident that you think it's really good or that it works really well, right? So it's kind of funny because the way Sangal was playing, it's like they did several times just walk into ramp and just duel. And like if FaZe just had an opera posted there, it probably wouldn't have worked out necessarily that well. Just had an opera posted, right? And Sangal on their CT side are just gonna have an opera posted. This round should be pretty cut and dry, yeah. How does Sangal mess up? How do they must lose this? Surely they must lose this round then, right? They've got to lose this round if they didn't lose the last one. If they mess up somehow. Oh, okay. This is a 2-part demo. Super firepower biased rosters, but it's because the game's speeding up in CS2. I don't know if it's necessarily that the reason that you would make a firepower based roster is because the game's sped up in CS2, although I don't disagree with that. But like, I think until a game is kind of figured out, I think playing heavily firepower based, like at the beginning of CSGO, you could say CSGO is more tactical than CS2. But like at the beginning of CSGO, it was similar, right? Like I think you had kind of a similar idea where, you know, teams that had just a ridiculous amount of firepower kind of over-delivered, right? And then as it goes on, you're looking at more balance. All right, so aggressive outer, xFloud gets a kill, but I mean, one of the problems with getting aggressive outer is sometimes you can get trapped, especially if you don't have a second player throwing flashes, because one player only has one, like, because he threw that nade, right? Sammy probably only had one flash, which means you have one flash for him to go for the peak, but you don't have a flash for him to get away. And then he's just kind of trapped, and hopefully he gets one. Hopefully he gets one more. That's kind of what you're hoping for, I think. 4v4, though, Rain gets into a pretty aggressive position here that they might not be entirely expecting. Like, they probably know this is theoretically possible, but it's very tight timing for Rain to get to here. So if he had actually just walked into hell, he would have actually been able to get behind Sammy. But the timing. Oh, that's a fucking hard shot, okay? Let's be real. For a professional player, it's supposed to be easy, all right? But someone's back turned that long range. All right. Youngster gets a kill. Okay, so it's a 2v4. Now, plenty of time on the clock, so FaZe could go anywhere. So, and not only that, but Sangal have given up ramp for quite a while, so they know that FaZe probably know that ramp's empty. And because the Jota came through secret, so it's obvious. And I think Kerrigan has made noise getting here. If Kerrigan made noise getting here, then you're really thinking they're lower. Okay, but the drops. Okay, so Brokey's hearing them drop down vents, right? So he's just going to call Kerrigan to come heaven instead of going anywhere else. And he's going to... I mean, you can argue on the timing. So I think Kerrigan made noise going down, and then Sangal just over-rotate. So they just rotate 3 players lower, which is like not the end of the world because Sammy is in Squeaky. So Sammy's in a pretty good spot. The question is, should he... In this spot, 4v2, in like if you're 2v2, I feel like a lot of the time you're rotating around here. Maybe not 2v2, but if you're like 4v4, maybe you're rotating around there. But 4v2, you don't want to give up that kill, right? Because if he goes back through lobby and he dies to someone hut, then it's a 2v3 and it's very winnable for FaZe, right? So he wants to like stick with his team, but then his whole team is going to be coming up vents. This is awkward. That's why like you could argue for or against him. Oh, he can't die though. Oh my God. Him dying before they start coming up vents is the round. That's actually the round. Maybe not actually. No, maybe they still had a pretty good chance. No, I lied. Yeah. I thought the bomb was further ticked down. I was like, that's the round, because I thought they had 2 guys coming up vents. But they did have 2 guys coming up vents, but Youngster, man, this rotation is like faster than I would have thought. It just feels like further than it is. Like the bomb isn't going to be that ticked down by the time Youngster goes all the way around from vents. It does waste a lot of time though. And Kerrigan is just gambling that they're not heaven. Which is like, this is the type of play that you kind of have to make, you know? This is the type of play that I feel like people don't make nearly enough in like the mid levels. Like in like face it 10 players don't make enough. Where you know that something's possible, but you know that you're just in such an unwinnable position that if you respect every position your opponent can be in, you're simply going to lose. You just have to gamble in some way. And like, you know, you have to gamble something. You have to gamble in, and if you're not gambling, you're just gambling in a different way, you know? What's Jota's POV in the 4v, in the 3v2? All right, let me look. Did I go back far enough? Is this the same? No, this is the round. This is the round before. Oh, because this is a super short demo. Okay, my bad. Yeah, so he goes down through secret. Then he ends up going up heaven. He must just kill Kerrigan just like a second too late. And that's really clean movement, by the way, from Brokey. It didn't look like, there's nothing spectacular about the way he did that, but getting out of danger at the exact right time while like mitigating. Can he just not find the bomb? He just couldn't find the bomb? Okay. Yeah. Anyways, they kind of just gambled nobody's going to be having. And yeah, it's interesting. I don't know the perfect play. Like, the problem is if the player, I think it was Sammy, right, that was in Squeaky, if he flanks Hut, that's probably like the highest percentage individual play, but if he dies, then it's a 3v2 and it's like super losable, right? So he tries not to do that, but then you end up in this other uncomfortable position, right? You end up in this other rough spot. It's like not great either. So you kind of like, yeah, you have 2 not great options. All right, so upper hit straight into a 5-7 that does find a kill, and then Jota 1v2. Rops thinks he found the. Rops thinks he checked that at the right time, right? Rob's, I mean, this is like an upper. Man, Sangol activate all 5 players almost all 5 players on this hold, and Rob's looked away for like half a second. Rob's, like a second or 2 earlier, he would have seen that guy come out of heaven. He just looks away at the wrong timing, and then Frozen. Oh god, this is somewhat unfortunate timing. Somewhat unfortunate timing. I mean, Jota's quick with the rotate. Respect for that. And FaZe have to be aware that they leave that timing. A lot of the time you see this bomb get planted, and then the guy just jiggles like left and just checks and then comes back around. But usually that's when they call that the timing was there. But that timing was so short for Jota to get out that I can see why they had no idea. That's just on Rops, because Rops stops and he takes like a look back. He's like, I need to check my flank Squeaky. And that's, I don't know, you can say, I just said it was on Rops, but I don't know. Sometimes those timings do just happen, and it's almost like just the reality of the game that 1 in 1,000, oh my god, he's gonna get knifed, okay. 1 in 1,000 times someone finds that timing, like. Is it possible that Rops, that timing was so short that Rops... no, the problem is that what Rops needed to do, he checks the flank squeaky, he needs to peek back out, and then peek a little bit wider just to make sure nobody can get out. That's like... I think that's like as simple as it is. Do you stream on Twitch often? Well, I've been streaming the last few days, but not usually. All right, I mean, FaZe are on pistols here. They're not forcing, so they're not really supposed to win this, but they do kind of need a plant if they want to have a really good buy in the following round. And okay. He's just, yeah. I guess he thinks he would hear the door open, or he thought he saw... He just thought they couldn't be there that quickly. I mean, FaZe did, like, leg it. Straight out single door, right? But, what else are they gonna do? When they kill the Opera, they're gonna, like, they're on pistols, right? They're just gonna run down the Op most of the time. That's, like, kind of, like... That round was, like, actually super losable after Jota dies there. That round was actually, like... FaZe certainly could have won that round, realistically. In fact, I think they were, like, 2v2. And they had the Op, too. That round, that's crazy. That's crazy. All right, so Rops gets close ramp. So one of the things is, if this was smoked, I bet you Rops would have tried to cross over to the right side. But because it's not smoked, then he's kind of sitting here. And I know that the scary thing is, when no smoke gets thrown ever, you're like, they're walk pushing on me, aren't they? This Opera's just gonna walk into me and no scope me, isn't he? He's just gonna hard clear this angle and fucking destroy me in 2 seconds, isn't he? At least that's how I feel when I'm in this spot and there's no smoke. At least that's how I feel. But again, I mean, they're starting this Opera ramp every round. Is this something that Sangol just do? Or is this... That's just... It can't just be something they do, right? Maybe... I mean, teams start the Opera ramp often. Some teams do. But this is what, like, almost every gun round they're starting their Opera ramp? Alright, so first contact was made outer. Let me see what actually happened, though. Sorry, I thought he was in secret. I didn't realize he was actually walking across. So he's just going to lurk through with the flash, but he gets blinded by his own team's flash. And then he actually does. That is left eye peek. Okay, I talk about left eye peek is like the most overrated thing in the world, and everyone talks about it, and it's not that big a deal. It's almost never relevant. Left eye peeking is relevant when you are both close to an angle. So think connector on overpass. That's when left eye peeking is relevant, because that's when you're both close to the angle, which means neither of you has an advantage, but because you're close to the angle, you're like that left side being like easier to see is more significant. So we look at this from xFloud's POV. Yeah. He's also got lit from the flank. Okay, so maybe the left side thing wasn't a big deal. Okay, well, we'll edit that out. We'll edit. The left side thing wasn't a big deal. It's no biggie. It's no biggie. And then just a ridiculous shot hit onto Frozen. You can hear it. You can hear the ridiculousness of that shot. He peeks out and just insta double dinks Frozen, I think. Then 3v5. I mean, FaZe are supposed to lose this. There's a lot of time on the clock. They have a chance, but with 5 players alive, the CTs kind of just need to make a mistake here. They need to, like, leave a gap. And oftentimes, I mean, there's very few angles on Nuke that you can play that don't leave you open to taking a duel, even if it's a duel where you have a pretty big advantage, right? Like, if you want to have a guy mini, he's gonna make contact at some point, or xFloud was gonna have to make contact and he was gonna in a good position, but if he gets hard cleared, he's just dead. But that actually makes it somewhat winnable. But man, okay. So I saw someone in my Discord before. There's always a benefit peeking left, but it is much more important because it gets larger the closer. So there's always a benefit peeking right, you always have an advantage on someone that is peeking left, right? But as you get closer, well, the thing is, if you're both at equal distances from the corner, if it's far from the corner, it's a very small note. It's very hard to notice, even though it is a slight advantage. But when you're close to the corner, then there is often times where you'll see that the guy holding an angle to the right is going to see the left side of that player, and that player won't won't peek far enough to have seen the player that sees him. You know what I mean? Because yeah, the time. I don't think the timing is the significant thing. Like if someone swings into you and they're peeking to the left versus if they swing into you and they're peeking to the right, I don't think that that is that big of a problem. The problem is that sometimes, especially because if you're close to the angle, that gap between when you're visible and when you see them is bigger. I think the big problem is the amount of times that you're visible to someone that you can't see. Sorry. Someone in my Discord was talking about Jota was on it. Eternal Fire Academy, and he was like, how could they let this guy go? And I didn't know really what he was talking about because I hadn't yet realized that FaZe lost this game. I was like, yeah, he had like, oh my god, that is snappy aim. Jesus. Okay, oh my god. The dichotomy of man. The dichotomy of man. Jesus. Oh wow. They're just going to triple re-aggress through secret. These are the plays I love to see. It's risky. It's an aggressive play. It's risky, but it's not dumb. It's like, yes, there are ways that this could go wrong, but you're taking a coordinated, like a calculated risk where it's like, if the T's all go through secret, you just have better guns. You're just supposed to win that the vast majority of the time because you just have better guns. And you're catching them off guard. They're going to see one guy, the second guy's going to swing. It's so easy to like double and triple up because they're going to swing into you thinking there's only one guy. They're going for the trade without even thinking because you have to process the call, right? You have to process the call. It's like 3 there. You're already peeking before you even process the fact that your teammate said 3 there, right? Yeah, these sorts of like double, triple reaggress. This is very similar to the idea behind like double aggressing, like double walking through hut. You're like, let's say your opponents like do outer utility and then you think, you know, they had some pressure. It looked like they started cross and then they make contact ramp. That's like the double aggress hut is super common because you're just going to overwhelm the very like the numbers are just in your favor. There's only going to be one guy hut like max. But because of the timing on that, that's such a good call, dude. It's like, it's very small. It's like small, but it's like, because of the timing on that, FaZe had just had like 3 players spotted outer. So they're either going secret or they're like and you're fighting them in like this huge advantage, or they're going back lobby, right? Like there's very few options, and now they can just be in a complete upper stack, and FaZe just has no chance. Fuck. That was a great call. Yeah, I can see, like, someone said that, like Sangol played really well here. I mean, FaZe did make some mistakes. There was a couple rounds they definitely could have won. They got a bit unlucky. I think you have to admit they got a bit unlucky at times. But Sangol did also just play a really, really good game. And Jota fucking dominated like every straight up aim duel.